We go.
Hey guys, can everybody hear me? Find me on chat, that'd be really great. Welcome to Eco Tech Talk Tuesday. And I'm trying to stick with you from the 20th.
All right, good morning. Thanks for joining us. For some of you that have joined us before, we always start with this first slide, a little bit about AQL Technologies. So we've been doing this for the past 20 years. AQL Technologies, and Samir in particular, has 12 plus years of SharePoint experience. We have 30 expert developers, analysts, and scientists working for us. AQL was founded in 2006. So as I say, we've been doing this for just a little more than 12 years. Hundreds of satisfied clients and growing. Hundreds of projects we've been working on. We're a Microsoft Gold partner for SharePoint. We also accept the Microsoft SharePoint Planning and Development Services. That means if any of your organizations have those green vouchers for projects, they're primarily used for assessments and training. They come in like a 1, 3, 5, and 7-day vouchers. We accept those. We use those. AQL is a minority business enterprise partner, and for the state of Illinois, disadvantaged business enterprise as well. So a couple minority certifications. Also the National Minority Supplier Development Council. Companies like Walgreens, Abbott Labs, AbbVie, others do this. So if you have a minority diversity program, we could be a part of that with you. Got clients all over the United States, North America, France, and Australia. We primarily focus on SharePoint and Office 365, IT consulting, custom software development, managed SharePoint services, and even IT staffing within the Microsoft stack, including SharePoint, .NET, SQL Server, and Dynamics 365. Many of you we might have met at conferences, SharePoint conferences throughout the United States. So we're going to be in Boston in August next month. And Samir Mohammed, our practice lead, is a frequent speaker at many of these events. We, of course, do these monthly tech talks, and you'll come see us again maybe next month. So I'm going to pass it back over to Samir now. Thank you, folks.
Hey guys, can you hear me now? Awesome. All right, my bad. I think my mute button was clicked in. Sorry about that. So let's get started. So this is a little bit information about me. I think a lot of you guys might have attended my webinar. But thank you so much. There seems to be an overwhelming response to this webinar, and the reason might definitely be the Power Apps. There seems to be a lot going on in the Power Apps world. I'm going to get started right with Power Apps. And so here is a Power Apps. Here is the broader picture of Power Apps, and you can actually see that Power Apps is part of this bigger business platform, which includes Power BI, Power Apps, and Microsoft Flow. In this session today, I'm just going to be covering Power Apps. So Microsoft Flow and Power BI might just be a different webinar. Let me launch a real quick poll, which is going to give me an idea of the skill set in the audience right now. Can you answer this question, please? I'm going to give you guys like 30 seconds, or maybe like a minute or so. This is going to give me an understanding of how much Power Apps is being used. Okay? I see 73% have voted. All right, so I see that 80% have voted, and there seems to be 42% to 58%, which is 42% are currently using it, and 58% have not been using it. So that's perfectly fine. Another real quick poll is, which version of SharePoint are you guys using? I'm going to give 30 seconds again. Wow, 79% is SharePoint Online so far. Cool. So 76% is SharePoint Online versus SharePoint 2013, which is 16%, and there seems to be 2% of SharePoint 2016 and 7% of SharePoint 2010. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, and let's take a look. So going back a little slide, and so for those who have not used Power Apps, this is how Power Apps really work. It's only for the cloud Office 365, but you could still use these connections or connectors or gateways to connect with even on-prem databases. There's a Power App Studio that you can actually build, and we're gonna make full use of the Power App Studio in today's session. And you can use Power App to connect to several different data sources, pull the information together, and integrate that in one single form. In today's session, I'm going to be entirely focused on customizing SharePoint lists using Power Apps. In the past, I have done webinars where I've done demos on just creating Power Apps for mobile applications. But in today's session, is going to be entirely on creating Power Apps native to SharePoint, which is using Power Apps for customizing the SharePoint list forms, kind of like in lines with what we used to do back in the days with InfoPath or with Nintex forms or K2 forms. So this is how the Power App Studio looks like. And if you have used it, it's pretty good. If not, we're going to do a pretty detailed demo on this. On the right-hand side are the properties of the controls that you click. On the left-hand side, you're going to get a broader picture of all the controls in the game over here. Up in the top, you can actually write down formulas. And so it's a pretty powerful tool. And the beautiful thing about it is that I can download the Power App Studio on my machine from Windows Store or from my browser, or I could just go ahead and open up the Power App Studio right in the browser and make modifications right then and there. And that's exactly what I'm going to do in this session. I'm going to use the Power App Studio right in the browser instead of downloading it. Now, I'm going to get straight to demo. And in this session, I'm going to go ahead and talk about expense approval application. This is a decent complex expense approval application that we have done for certain clients in the past. But the thing is that it's not 100% completed. It's kind of like the prototype that we had showed it to them, but it's going to include a lot of functionality, and a lot of the functionality is mentioned over here. We're going to start with, so this is what we're going to learn today. Of course, SharePoint list customizations, having multiple screens, having different controls, several different controls within the form. Multiple screens is going to be, you're going to see how there's going to be multiple screens. Creating tabs, that's one of the questions that I get a lot. Hey, how can I create tabs in Power Apps? We're going to see how I can do that. Reading and saving data from several lists on the same form. So one form is going to retrieve information from a couple different lists at the same time. Filtering information. How do I filter information and display? Variables, collections, data formatting, and role-based security. So this form that I have is going to include all these different features. This is kind of like the information architecture, and these are the lists. And just a brief overview. So there are 5 different lists involved, and there's a category list that's easy. It just includes a list of categories for the expenses. There's a subcategories list, and these arrows that you see over here, all those there are more columns to these lists, by the way, but I didn't mention all of them. The only columns that you see over here are the ones which are lookup columns. These are the ones which are defining the relationships between different lists. So subcategories, the categories column and subcategories are pointing to the categories list. Expense submission is the list on which I have the Power App form. So when you click on new expense submission, so this is kind of like the expense header, which actually defines what this expense is all about. But this expense can have multiple line items, multiple expenses, multiple lines, and all those expense details are multiple lines of expense associated with the main expense is stored in expense details. And there's a relationship. Expense is the lookup column pointing to the expense column and expense submission. And again, the Power App is done right on that. And also, I'm gonna be getting the approver based on the total amount of the expense itself. So if the amount is between $0 to $1,000, it might be Samir doing the approvals, or it might be somebody else. But if it's $1,001 to $20,000, then it might be Donna doing the approvals. This is a pretty typical situation that we get all the time. So there seems to be, again, decent complexity involved in this entire form. And it's got a couple different statuses. It's got 4 different statuses. And so these are the roles, these are the actions, and these are the statuses that we're going to be developing in this form. The first one is saved. As soon as the user enters the information, it's going to be saved. It's going to be the status of saved. When the user submits it for review, it's going to be submitted. And then the Power App business logic evaluates the correct approver based on the amount. Even then, it's going to be submitted. The status is still going to be submitted. And then now this is where the role-based security kicks in, and the approver logs in, and the only thing that an approver can do is just approve or reject, and that's when the status changes. So this is kind of like the high-level overview of what we're going to be developing today. Different, again, just to make sure where we're heading. So these are the different expense statuses. Starts with saved, then the user clicks on submit for review. That's when the status changes to submitted. And then the approver logs in and then either approves or rejects it. So nice and easy. And I think that this slide over here should give you an understanding of how this approval mechanism works. All right, so these are some of the screenshots of the application that we're going to be developing, but I'm going to get real hands-on right now and then show you how it's really done before we go ahead and develop that. Okay, so show you the screens real fast. And okay, so this is my expense submission list, and I click on new, and as soon as I click on new, I get my Power App screen. Okay, and I just go ahead and enter my Power App, which is, hey, trip to Dallas, which I did last week, or actually this week. We're seeing a few clients. The status is saved as we have just seen. And then let's go ahead and enter the expense as, hey, starting from the 6th till the 9th. Trip to Dallas to meet clients. So, hey, this is my first screen. Okay, nice and easy and simple. And by the way, here's my tab. I click on help over here, and this is where everything disappears, and this is a help tab. So it just works perfect. Click on expense. I can enter the expenses. Click on help. Hey, help is coming soon, or I can just have anything in there. But the whole purpose of having these two tabs, and I'm going to show you how this actually works. Click on save. Nice and easy. Just submits it, saves the information, and then I get a second screen, okay, which is kind of like the same as the first one. The only thing is that I can edit the top section. There are no expenses yet, so total expenses is blank. And I can click on add expense screen over here to start adding expenses. Okay. Now we're going in a different screen, which is a third screen. Okay. So multiple screens, how they work together is what we're seeing over here. Enter the expense, which is, let's just say travel. Click on travel down to the bottom in the category. And then you're going to see that the subcategory is a cascading drop down. As soon as I click on that, the values of the subcategory changes. Okay. So I'm going to say lodging to start with was, I'm going to click on add. And as soon as I do that, there's validations built in over here. So it's saying, hey, fields cannot be blank. All fields are required. I'm going to enter $1,200 and click on add. And as soon as I click on add, the amount is also formatted. You can see that. Okay. It takes a little bit of effort to actually format this amount, and I'll show that to you how it's actually done. Also, while I'm adding this, you can see that it's being added down at the bottom. And let me go ahead and add another expense over here, which is going to be airfare was, just say $500, $200. Okay. Well, actually, it was definitely more than that, $400. Okay. And here I have, and then finally, I'm going to enter food. I think that food took, let's just say $100. Okay. And this was dining in. Again, the cascading drop down changes its value depending on the category. Click on add, and all the amount is formatted. Now, here's the thing, as I just mentioned, that this is making use of variables as well as collections. There's a logic built behind it, and it's making use of collections. And these collections are, anybody who's got a little bit of programming background or even background with InfoPath, collection is a dynamic thing. It's a dynamic collection. It's really a collection of information. And it's not, and as if I close the screen without saving the information, all this information is lost. Okay, so what I need to do is that I need to click on add to expense. And when I click on add to expense, this is when all this information is being saved in my list behind the scenes. Okay, and after that, I'm back to the main screen where I can see the expense header information. I can see the total amount over here is $1,700, and I can see all the expense detail line items. Okay, and again, I'm logged in as a user who's just entering expenses. So far, it's just, me entering expenses, and the status is still saved. What I would do, what me as an end user would do right when I'm done with entering expenses is I click on submit for approval. Clicking on submit to approval closes the form, and then it also changes status. So if I go back and open up trip to Dallas again, then it changes the status to submitted. And I should have showed this to you. There was no approver before. There was no approver. Approver is being evaluated from a different list. And I'll show that list to you in a second. And at this point in time, the status is submitted, and I have no buttons over here to add any more expenses. Okay, all I can do, this is just read only, and even if I click on edit all over here up in the top, it's just read only. I just can't do anything to it. So there are no controls. I can edit anything, and the functionality is just pretty tight, and it's secure. It's role-based security. I cannot make any more modifications over here. This all depends on the status. The status is submitted. The only person who can actually go and approve, who can actually do any kind of modifications to this, is going to be the approver. And before I log in as the approver and show you what the approver is doing, let me go back and click on visualize and also show you how I can visualize my expenses here. So those expenses that I've entered, travel, airfare, food, and this is the amount. I can visualize these expenses. Of course, I can have much beautiful colors, but this whole functionality, but this whole customization is based on showing you more functionality rather than, rather than the UI itself. So the good part is that now I'm all checked in. The users have entered all, me as a user has entered all the details. And now I'm going to log in as Donna. Close this out. And also let me show you the expense configuration list, which actually holds the approvers. Okay. So here are the approvers. So here are the approvers. Between $0 to $1,000, it's Submit Demo, which is a different account. I use that account for demo. I'm logged in as a different user, by the way. But between 1,000 to 5,000 is Donna Cardin. So my program was smart enough to get information from a different list, which is expense configuration list, get the approver, and then save the approver in the expense submission list on which the Power App is running. So if I scroll towards your right, you're going to see approver is now Donna Cardin for trip to Dallas. And if I log in and, if this sounds a little confusing, let me just go back to my information architecture here and show you how this whole thing was done. Expense submission is where the Power App has been customized and it's running. And expense configuration has the from, to, and the approver amounts and the approver details. So really, the Power App farm is running this logic to get information from expense configuration. Okay. So with that being said, let me log in, and then let me log in as Donna Cardin. I'm going to log in as Edge as Donna Cardin over here, and click on expense submissions, and click on trip to Dallas. Of course, in a more, I'm just being extremely cautious of time. That's the reason there's a workflow behind the scenes as well that I can display that to you, and might be, when the logic is a little more, I might want to have, certain tasks generated, certain tasks, so that the user, Donna, can actually look at the task instead of coming in over here. I have not done that part. I'm very cautious of the time that we're going to spend over here. As soon as Donna logs in, no matter from where, even if she clicks on the list and she logs in, she's going to be seeing only these two buttons, approve and reject. Okay, she can definitely visualize that. Edit button is there, but it's not going to help. And finally, Donna clicks on approve. And that's when the information is approved. That's when this record is approved. And I see the status is approved right now. Okay. And once it's been approved, Donna goes back again and opens it up. Even those two buttons are not there. Approve and reject is not there. So all Donna sees is, hey, you know what? This is just now a read-only record. This record is locked. Can't really do anything much with it. So let's go back and then start implementing this. All right, let's get some real hands-on. Now that I have shown you what functionality are we going to be developing. And again, being very cautious of the time, I'm going to go ahead and do this. There are 4 screens. I'm going to go ahead and do one screen, and then we're going to go back to the main app and then review the code that's already been done. Okay. The first thing is I go to expense submission list, and then I see Power Apps up in the top, and I click on Customize Forms. As soon as I do that, now this is what I'm getting in the Power App Studio itself. Opens up right on the web. Again, you can do the same thing. You can download it on your local machine and open it up, but this is just so convenient that I could just make modifications right here itself. Okay, and as soon as I log in, actually I see an older version of this form. I'm going to close it up and then open it up again. I was just messing with this, and I might have customized this a little bit. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and restore a previous version. And you can actually look at it. You can store as you keep making modifications to the form. You have the option of storing all the versions as well. All these versions of the Power App form that you have customized are actually stored over here, and you can restore it back to any version that you want. In my case, I'm just going to restore it to the first version. Okay, so also here's the thing, there's concurrency built within it, there's locking mechanism built within it, which means that if somebody else has opened up this form and trying to make modification, it's not going to let you do that. Okay, so in my case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the form, the expense form that was open on my side over here. Okay, and close this, close the Power App Studio, and then try restoring it, which is good. And I like it. This is how it's supposed to be. If I'm making modifications, I don't want anybody else to make modifications. And then here, I've just restored it to the first version all the way back. And then I might need to just publish this. Every single time a modification has been made, and if you want everybody to see the modification on the Power App form, you have to make sure that you publish it. I think I just published it. Let's go back and now this is a different environment than the one that I just demoed to you. With the entire form that I just showed to you, this is a second environment. When I click on new on exactly the same form, I'm going to see nothing but just a plain, simple InfoPath form. I'm sorry, I apologize. Why am I saying InfoPath? Just a plain, simple, SharePoint modern list form, which is, hey, I don't have my Power App form, which is good. Now I'm going to go ahead and customize this. Close it up. Click on Customize Form, and this is going to open up my Power App Studio. Takes a second. And here I am. So it opens up my Power App Studio, and I see a few errors over here, and really those errors are because I deleted a few columns after I created them, and then the first version actually had it. So just to make it easy, I'm just going to go ahead and delete these, and there are no errors. Okay. So hopefully this is visible to you guys. There seems to be a little bit of hopefully this is visible to you guys. So this is the Power App Studio, and this is the first screen. I can have multiple screens. I showed you 4 screens. This is only one screen. And when I click on these screens, it shows me a list of all the controls which are right on this page. The most important control is the form control. And the form control includes all those different controls. On the right-hand side, I'm going to see permissions. Okay. Properties, I apologize. I'm going to see properties, and when I click on the data over here, it shows me the data source, which this form is connected with. Okay. Up in the top, I can write down formulas. And, right now, the data source for this form control is expense submission. So it's all about just getting information from expense submission. Now, let's go ahead and start customizing this. The first thing that I do is click on the data source over here, and I'm going to say, snap me columns, show me 2 columns, okay, which it does, but it's still pretty small. I'm going to go to File, and then change the app settings and make it landscape, okay. So right now it's in portrait. I prefer landscape, which is done. Go back, and here it is. Let's make it a little smaller, okay. And I'm going to expand this all the way through, and the columns are going to be auto-adjusting by itself. And go back to data, and then click on horizontal, and I think I'm going to go ahead and make it 3. Okay. So this is how it looks like. I can go ahead and preview it, and this is how the form's going to look like, okay, which is nice and okay, but it's got several different columns over here, which I don't really need, like modified, created, and stuff like that. So I'm going to go back, click on the form, and disable those fields that I don't need. ID, modified, created. I'm going to just remove anything that I don't need. And I'm going to be left with, and as I uncheck them, those columns disappear right from the canvas. And I need description down at the bottom over here. Oops, come on. Okay, down at the bottom over here, that's where I need my description. And other than that, as we have seen, and as I mentioned to you, the status column is supposed to be read-only column, versus what I have over here, it's a text box. Approval column is a drop-down or an entry field as well, whereas it's supposed to be read-only as well. So both these 2 columns needs to be read-only. The first thing I'm going to do is, again, go back to my data source. And when it comes down to status, click on this, and then I'm going to say view text only. And then on the approver side, I'm going to do the same thing. Click on it, and then change it to view lookup only. And on the description side also, what I'm going to do is, right now, oops, I didn't mean to uncheck it. Right now, it's edit text, which is okay, but I want it to be edit multi-line text. Click on edit multi-line text, and this is what I get. Okay. And expand this a little bit if that's what you want. Might be okay. Oops. Okay. Actually go back to the properties again for the data source, expense submission. And instead of 3, I'm going to say, let me get 2. Okay. And so snap to columns to set to true, and that's what I have. Description over here. Expand the description a little more towards the right, and then expand it a little more. And that's what I get. Okay. So far we have seen how these controls work. Okay. And I can, once you run it, this is how it looks like. But the first thing that I want to show you is creating tabs. How do I create tabs? I get the question large. Samir, are there any tabs in here that I can create? So there's a trick to do that. Tabs is basically, you don't really have a tab control in here, but I can go ahead and bring this down, this whole form down, and then tab is going to be a combination of a couple different buttons and a few tricks to it. So that's my first button right there. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to adjust this button right here and expand a little bit. Make it a little bigger so that it almost looks like it's a tab. Make the text a little bigger. Go back to home. Set it to 16. Okay. And if you take a look at it, it still looks like a button. Okay. You know what? Just move it a little bit. It still looks like a button. Okay. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and change this, use some properties over here, scroll down, and then you're going to see border radius. Okay. Make this to 15. And look what it does. It kind of like rounds the edges over here, which looks okay. I like it. That's how borders are. That's how tabs are up in the top. But the bottom ones are supposed to be just flat straight. So click on advanced and then click on more options. And I'm going to say that, hey, you know what? Round edges up in the top. But the bottom one, which is the bottom left and right, I don't want round edges over here. Okay, and as soon as I do that, I get the rounded edges up in the top, but not at the bottom. All right, so that looks good. On the right hand side, again, it's all about the properties. I'm going to give it a proper name, which is BTN expenses. Okay. And because this is the expense tab, and give it a proper name, which is, instead of button, let's just go ahead and say expense submission. Okay. So this looks nice and good so far. Okay. I got my one tab, but now I got to go ahead and create a second tab as well. So copy and paste the same control. Okay. And just put right next to each other. Maybe give a little bit of gap in the middle. And let's see what we get. Okay, so seems to be a little bit of gap, but it's beginning to look like a tab. And in this case, I'm going to go back and change the name of the button, make use of the properties, and then give it a unique name, which is button help, and then change the text to from expense submission to help. All right, so if you take a look at it, and if I go ahead and run it, okay, you know what? These are my two tabs, right? But these tabs really don't do anything. So now we're going to start using some tricks over here. And these tricks are going to include making use of variables. But before I start doing that, I'm just going to draw one last button, which is going to be a save button. And give it a proper name, BTN save. Change the button property from button to save, and might be just give it a bigger font size, 14, or might be 16. Okay. So hopefully, everybody's getting it. Feel free to ask me if you have any questions, but and hopefully there's a little bit of resolution issue over here, but hopefully it's just me and not just you. Okay. And on my side, it seems to be, just displaying just fine. So, but if you have any concerns, just let me know. If you want to change, if you want me to change resolution here. Now let's go ahead and implement the tabbing, the real tabbing logic. I want the color to change. If I'm on the expense submission, then I want it to be, then I want this tab to be blue in color and then the one to be light blue in color. And then the one, and if you go to fill, there's a certain property by the name fill. This is where the color is specified. Okay, and you can see that. So what I need to do is that I need to use certain formulas. I have a list of formulas that I've written down. I'll share that with you as well. And those formulas pretty much just display all the formulas that I'm using over here. It might look a little overwhelming in the beginning, but you will soon realize that it's the same kind of formulas which is being used over and over again. This is a button. The first thing I'm going to do is there's an on select property. I can go ahead and program on select property. And I can go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and make use of a variable by the name show help. This is an introduction to variables that are pretty strong, and you can actually base your logic, a lot of logic based on that. When this button is clicked, all I'm saying is that just set the value of a show help variable to false. And I'll show you in a second how you can see these variables. The second thing I'm going to do is that when the user clicks on help, so for on select for help, I'm going to do the same thing, which is, but in this case, I'm going to say set it to true. Okay, so when user clicks on this, it's false. When user clicks on this, the show help variable is true. Now I'm going to go ahead and sort everything over here and base it based on this variable. So go back and select my form control here and make use of the visible property. Right now it's true. No matter what is true, I'm going to write down a conditional here, which is if this property is, it's going to be if the user has clicked on show on expense submission, only then it should appear. If not, it should just be false. So do the same thing for form as well, and I'll show you in a second how this works. Let's go ahead and run this and see how this works so far. So if I click on help, hey, those controls are gone. If I click on expense submission, those controls are back again. So all I'm saying is that when the user clicks on this, set the value of a certain variable to false, and all these controls get their visibility from right from that control, right from that variable itself. All right, shut this down. And write down the code for, actually, you know what? I want to have it change colors as well. So these buttons have got a property by the name fill. It's a very interesting property. It just has the color code over here. So right now it's like no matter what, it's always dark blue in color. But what I'm going to say is that if the user is on expense form, then keep it blue. If not, make it a lighter color. I'm going to do the same thing for help as well. If the user is on fill right now, and you can see that the color just changes. Let me go ahead and run it. I'm on the expense submission, and then help is light blue. So the focus is entirely on expense submission. I click on help, and look at that. This brightens up, and this is just light blue. So these are conditions that I'm writing down, and again, I'll give you all these formulas as well. It's all documented in a sheet, and I'll just send that over to you. Now, the last thing is we really haven't programmed anything for the save button over here. User clicks on save button here, and let's go ahead and write down some code, which is again on select. You're going to be using the on select over and over again. And I'm going to say that when user clicks on it, do something which is going to be submit form. Okay. And the form is this right here. Let me go ahead and give it a proper name. Form new. Okay. So user clicks on save, then just go ahead and submit all the information which is there in this form over to the list associated with this. So nice and easy. Let's go ahead and publish this and let's see what happens now. Click on Control S, which is saving it. And then after that, I need to go ahead and publish it. Go back to file. And by the way, while we are here, you're going to see variables over here. You click on variables. And right now, there's only one variable, and it shows me that. Show help, and this is the name of the variable. You click on the variable. This is pretty nice. You know, it shows you where those variables are being used as well. Click on it, and it's going to take you right where the variable is being used as well. So it's pretty nice. I like it. This is the proper. These are for anybody with programming experience. These are more kind of like global variables, and they're going to be used all over the form. I'm going to go ahead and publish it. No matter what, you need to publish that. If not, users cannot view it. Let's go ahead and publish it. And now that it's published, let's go back to my, actually here, I can just click open this right here. My Power App form, my Power App demo form, and then right on expense submission, click on new, and this is what I get. Like that, my tab is working. And let's go ahead and hit on information, which is like trip to Dallas and 10. Okay, actually, you know what? I was there on Friday, okay. Back on 9th, okay, and just some description. And then click on save. And here's my entry, trip to Dallas. Okay, so now let me go ahead and show you some of the other screens. And now I'm going to switch over to the code that I have, to the full done app that I displayed to you in the beginning. And let's go back and take a look at how this has been done. I got several different screens, and you can see that new form, edit form, add expense, and graph. You can create as many screens as you want, and it's right here. Click on new screen, and for the most part, I've been using scrollable screens. Okay. As soon as, and what's going to happen is when the user clicks on the new button, in my case, you know, it just closed. But then, as we have seen in the past when I did the whole demo, it just switched over to the edit screen, and this is how the edit screen looks like. It's got two different controls. It's got the tabs. It's got two different controls up in the top and down at the bottom. This is a data table, actually right here. This is a data table, and the data table is also getting its information from, it's getting its data from a list by the name, is getting its information from data list. I'm sorry, by a list. But then I need to make sure that the amount over here is formatted. And if I'm getting the information right from the list, I cannot format the amount. I need to dynamically format the account and the $sign and format it. So to do that, what I've done is I have retrieved the information from the list, and you probably might see a little complicated formula over here, and this might actually look overwhelming, but as you get into it, these are all Excel-based formulas, and once you get into it, you're gonna get a knack, you're gonna get an understanding of all of this, and you're gonna be like, wow, this is easy, man, it's just the same formulas over and over again. But what I'm doing is that over here, I'm actually retrieving information from expense submission list, okay, and then after that, I'm adding a formatted column, and the formatted column is and giving it a name, formatted amount. And I'm formatting the amount that's being retrieved from the list, which is just a pure number. I can't display that to the user. It's got to be formatted, and then formatting it. And then taking the whole thing and putting in a collection variable. Okay, so pretty much actually what's happening is that retrieving the information and then formatting the column and then putting it in a collection. That's really what's happening over here. And if you want to, again, if you want to know what collections are, this is just dynamic information. You can retrieve information, load it up in a collection, when it comes down to a lot of records, you can't store that in a variable. It's got to be a collection. If you want to take a look at all the collections that are being used, go back to the file, go back to collections, and you can actually see a list of all the collections which are being used over here. I have collection 1, collection 2, collection 3. And right now, this is a collection, and it also shows you the data, which is actually loaded up in the collection. So this is a collection that has been loaded up. And remember, I just showed you the formatted amount column. This is what the formatted amount column is. It's all being formatted. Okay. So collections are very powerful. You can do a lot of different things on collections. Now let me go ahead and show you how I'm implementing this role-based security. If I'm logged in over here, I don't see any buttons over here, but there are buttons. Let's take a look at my control section on the left-hand side, and let's take a look at the Add Expenses button, okay, or Submit Expenses button, or Approve Image. And you can see that I can feel it, but I don't see it. Okay, it's just invisible. The reason it's invisible is because it's got formulas written on it, which actually make it, which actually and because of those formulas written on it, the only time they're going to appear is when the condition is satisfied. Okay, and in my case over here, if I open up this conditions, the visible condition is, hey, if the status is saved, only then show it. Okay, which is just right here. Here's the status. The status is approved, so it's not showing it. So let's just say if I take out this formula here and then just write down true, okay, look at that. My text box just appears right there. It's been there all the time and I just didn't know it. Go back and hit on the approved status, and here it is. I see a few questions being asked. Give me a second. I'll start answering those questions. Anything that I can't answer, I get a list of these questions and then I'll answer. We'll post those answers back to you. You can reach out to Patrick as well if you need, if you have any more questions after this session. And the same applies for approve and reject as well. Here's my approve, and there's a certain formula written on it, which says that if the status is submitted and the approver, and then the user logged in as the approver, only then show it. Okay, so if I take this formula out, and then just set the value of visible to true and go back and take a look at it, then here's my control right there. So only when these conditions are being met, that's when the formula is being displayed. Only then the buttons are being displayed. And one of the things that I want to show you over here is submit expense. So what's happening on submit expense, and I can actually flash that to you real fast as well. So when we were on submit expense over here, and when I'm actually submitting expenses, so this is the submit for approval. There's no approver over here, but when I click on submit for approver, the program is evaluating the approver associated with this amount in a different list, in the expense configuration list, and then showing the approver. Okay, so look at that. Now when I go back and take a look at it, then here's approver. Okay, so how is that being done? That's a pretty complex logic, and the way it's being done is, if I take a look at the formula here, and this kind of like looks a little complicated the first time, but when you start getting in it, you're gonna find it pretty nice and easy. I know I keep saying that, but trust me. What's happening here is that I'm using a certain, I'm actually getting I'm actually retrieving, I'm going to expense configuration list and getting a list of all the amounts and then the ranges. So from this amount to this amount is so-and-so approver. And once, and I can show that to you real fast. So here's the list. I'm actually retrieving this entire list over here. And then in my code, I'm comparing which list item does my amount fit into. Is it this or is it this? In this case, since it was only $34, it fits right in here. And the approver over here is Samir Muhammad demo account, which is different from me again. And then that's really what's being stored over here in this approver. And as soon as I get that, I'm actually updating the patch function. You're going to be seeing this over and over again. Patch updates the SharePoint list with the information. So what I'm saying is that, hey, update the expense submission with a new approval that I found, but I'm applying a filter only on the specific expense that I'm in. So this is where the approver. This is where, it's going to be applying the approver only for this record and not for all the expenses. So it's, again, this is the logic that I'm actually using over here to evaluate the approver. The entire sum is being evaluated over here, and if you click on the entire sum, then this is dynamic. I could have just retrieved it from a column and use a workflow behind the scenes to do that, but I'm not doing it because I wanted to show you some real functionality over here. So if I click on text and then click on this drop down, you can see over here that it's retrieving all the information. There's a sum over here, okay? It's applying a filter on expense details list, which holds a list of all the detailed line items associated with this expense, and then filtering out only those expenses which belong to this, and filtering out all those expense detail records which are associated with the expense that I'm entering, and then doing a sum of that. You're going to be seeing filter function over and over again. So finally, the visualize, if I scroll down and show you the graph tab, which is when the user clicks on visualize. Here, let's go back and take a look at that again. Click on visualize, it's going to show you this graph, okay, with all the different amounts. So how's that being done? And that's nice and easy. So this is the third screen, this is the fourth screen, which is the graph, and this is a chart control. And on the chart control, you specify the data source. Okay, so let's go back, take a look at it. So here's the column chart control. Click on the data source and apply data source right here. In my case, again, it's a filtered data source. What I'm saying is that show me the charts for only the specific expense that I'm on. And each bar is an expense detail. Each bar is a record in itself from the expense details list. There could be thousands of expense details list items associated with all different expenses, but I just want to filter it and show only those expense details which belong to my expense. And that's what's being displayed over here. And there's labels and there's series which is being set. So guys, this is how it's being done. I would love to talk about a lot more. And these are all the different features that has been implemented in every single screen that I have gone over. Use of variables, use of collections, cascading dropdown. Let me go back and show you cascading dropdown. I'd get a chance to show you that. I'm going to go to another screen, which is add expenses screen, and then where I'm entering all the expense details. And this is a category. Let me zoom in a little bit. This is the category, and this is a subcategory. Category is getting its data source from the categories list, but whereas a subcategory is getting its data source filtered by the category that the user has selected in the category dropdown. And I have mentioned that in the items dropdown over here, in the items property of this subcategory. So works like a charm. I just love it. And so with that being said, I know I see a lot of questions over here. Let me go ahead and see if I start, let me go ahead and start answering some of these questions here. How to navigate between different screens in the same app. There's a navigate function to navigate between different screens. So there are 5 different screens that I have, and you can use this navigate function to actually navigate between different screens. I thought the second question, I thought you can only create apps in Power App and Power App. Actually, so yes, so for the past year or so, when Power Apps came out, the only way that you can implement, the only thing that you could do in Power Apps was create Power Apps for the mobile app. And that's when I kept saying that, hey, this is just not like InfoPad. This is just not like InfoPad. But then starting this year, Microsoft introduced this new feature where I can use Power Apps to customize SharePoint-based list forms, only list forms, okay? And this is when, Power Apps comes, really truly replaces InfoPad forms as well. Okay, here's a good question. Can you have multiple approvers instead of just one? Yes, I can. I just have one approver, but I can have multiple approvers as well. And I just have to make some modifications in the code and then just loop around and then select the approver out of the multiple approvers. Yes, that's possible. And then how to filter the items in a data table. Can I transfer this code from one site to other? Like I can do it in InfoPath. From what I know, I don't think it's possible. I see that there's a poll going on. Feel free to enter that poll while I keep asking these questions. How to filter the items in a data table based on ID. I use the filter function. You're going to be using filter function a lot. How are you inserting multiple items in from one list context to another list? Okay, it's kind of like a little complicated to answer that in one single question, but you can use the for all functions. It's a loop around. You loop around, the collection that I have, user interest 10 records, and all those 10 records are stored within a collection. You can loop around those collections and then use another function by the name patch, which I've just shown, and then insert all of them at the same time. Yes, so can I see different versions of Power Apps? Yes, you can see several different versions of the same Power App form, and all of these are and all these versions, you can just reach for all these versions. All right, guys, so we just got 2 more minutes. So I see that there are a few more questions. But we'll get back to you. But if you have any questions, please reach out to Patrick Quinn. And here's his email address, pquinn@aqltech.com. And also, please add webinars@aqltech.com. Please make sure that you leave me a feedback. Feedback is very, very important for me. Please make sure you leave me a feedback, of what you think the webinar is. And so that I can improve myself. Please add webinars@aqltech.com to list off your safe senders so that you are notified of our webinars, conferences, and we also give out 3-day conference passes. The next one, which is usually worth like $45. The next one is SharePoint TechCon in Boston. It's August 26th to 29th. We're going to be doing a lucky draw, and we're going to be sending out an email from webinars@aqltech.com. So please make sure that you subscribe to it, that you add that as a safe sender. And Charlie, I think that we're pretty much out on time. Thank you so much for being with me in my webinar. And if you have any questions, again, please reach out to Patrick Quinn. That's his email address. Thank you, guys.